welcome back to the Ecuador Insider podcast. Jesse, Brandon, and Carl back with you. We apologize for the 2-week, 3-week hiatus. Various circumstances took us away, so we appreciate your patience getting back with another pod. We just wrapped up our 5th Vilcabamba lifestyle retreat. That was a whole lot of fun. It always reminds me when we have the retreats, just how great the people are.
They are a treat.
They are a treat that come down here. And our next one's in October, so trick or treat. How great the people are that come down here and how much fun it is, to sort of give people that, open that window to, what our lives are like here and what it is like here in Ecuador for real. So we had a great time. Anything about that real quick?
Yeah, they were a good group, man. It was a fun group. They were a chill group. They got to see lots of areas of Vilcabamba and the surrounding areas and really see what their life could look like here. And that's kind of the point of the retreat, is to kind of get all the pieces of information that you'd have questions about if you were considering moving down here, and then getting some of those, not only those questions answered, but then getting some of those experiences firsthand, so that you're kind of immersed into it, so you get a jam-packed 10-day version of what life could be like here. It's been fun.
It was a great retreat. Really good group, like-minded individuals. That's the interesting part too. Like,
right on.
You have people from different countries. There were Canadians, there were some Europeans, Eastern Europeans, and everyone was on the same page about a lot of things, which is special.
I don't believe that's Eastern Europe, but that's okay.
That's not Eastern Europe? No?
No.
Czech?
No?
I don't think so.
It's not Eastern Europe?
My geography. Anyways, yeah.
Well, it's right there.
Somebody
close.
put us
Maybe
put
it's
in the
not,
comments
maybe it's
below.
not.
Tell us who's wrong. It
Right.
could be me.
Is it Czech Republic? It's not Czechoslovakia anymore.
Right,
I'm not
Czech Republic.
It's
Was
Czech
that what-
Republic. So where's Czech Republic, guys? Put in the comments
You're
below.
right. That might
You should
be.
ask them.
Wow.
I mean,
My ignorance.
Wow, this is good.
what do you say?
I abstain.
It borders Poland.
Oh, well, that's easy. Yeah, okay.
Polkova.
All right.
All right.
I'm going to say you might be right about this one.
Yeah, the European geography is complicated, right? There's
For me,
lots going on.
apparently.
It's not like U.S., Canada, Mexico. That's pretty easy. Yeah. Anyways, it was great. We had a good time. There was some cool stuff going on around town, which are interesting for them to experience. One of them would being the novenas. The novenas is 9 days of celebration here in Vilcabamba, downtown in front of the church. We have a cool vlog video coming out about that. The Ecuadorians know how to party. Ecuadorians love to party.
They do.
And they throw some pretty big parties.
They're pretty epic. For Vilcabamba, there was thousands of people in this square.
And they're safe and calm
That's
and
right.
respectful
That's what's-
and, like, it's nice.
I've been sharing little snippets of video back with family and friends, and we're there and we're sharing this. We're having these conversations, and Tiffany's like, "Gosh, this is so awesome! Like, we're here. It's 12:30 at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we're here, and it's safe. And there's a few people that are a little drunk, but there was no fights, there was no arguing. People were having a blast, and people were out hanging out, and kids, and it was really fun, man. It was totally safe.
No, I agree. It reminds me of back in Canada when I was in high school. There was these big parties like like the 4th of July type of thing, right? But for Quebec, we have our own celebrations. And I remember there were drunk people get into fights. Like we were looking for that stuff. And I feel like none of the people here are like that. Right?
No.
It's not common to see a fist fight at all.
Right.
I've never seen one.
And
I've never seen a fist fight.
A good chunk of this episode is going to be on U.S. versus Ecuador mentality, and it's different. Those things are different.
Yep.
What else was the celebration? Because the events in town, they were about the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Isn't that right? What is it in Spanish?
Yeah, Corazón Sagrado de Jesús. And that, when I understand about it, it's every parish. So Vilcabamba is a parish. San Pedro is a parish. Every parish has a patron saint. San Pedro is Saint Peter, San Pedro. And Vilcabamba is Sacred Heart of Jesus. That's their patron saint, basically.
Interesting.
I mean, that's kind of how, so when they do the novenas in San Pedro, there's the San Pedro, it's like bless us San Pedro, Saint Peter, whereas Vilcabamba was Sagrado Corazón de Jesús. And I'm not sure it's a Roman Catholic tradition, but it's 9 days of prayer, and celebration at the end of the
I mean,
mass, I guess.
AKA drinking
Parties.
and La Vaca Loca.
Vaca Loca
You
is
gotta,
great.
you gotta tell them about the Vaca Loca.
Oh, geez. Well, the Vaca Loca's, it's a hidden treasure of Ecuador. It's a damn treasure. It's unbelievable. It's a beautiful thing.
Gosh.
The crowd is surrounded. We've got tons of video of this, I think.
You're gonna see
We'll
it right
share
now.
some. So the crowd surrounds. They creates a big circle, and all the kids get in the circle. And then there's this guy that has this like metal bowl that he kind of has over the top of his head with handles.
Yep.
And it's got these fireworks and spinning wheels and sparklers and bottle rockets that shoot off of it. And they play music, and he dances around in the square with this Vaca Loca, and he
Crazy cow.
chases the kid, the mad cow, crazy cow, yeah. And he chases the kids, and they run around, and there's sparks flying. I mean, there was literally sparks flying in my face.
Oh, yeah.
Bottle rockets everywhere. It's complete insanity, and it's a national treasure. It's phenomenal. It is It is a blast. It's so much fun.
There was a guy with like a red
Yeah.
shirt,
He was
like
all-
doing
Olé!
yeah. I'd never seen that before. That was the first.
I mean, and what's fun too to point out for a second, like, can you imagine that happening in the Western world? Like, they're lighting fireworks on fire with people literally within 5 or 10 feet, with a guy holding the fireworks on his body, basically, and then there's sparks hitting everybody, and that's the game.
That's the game.
Which it's not dangerous actually at all. I've seen the Vaca Loca now probably 20 times or something in the last 10 years. They do it regularly, but you would just I mean there would be police with areas cordoned off back home, and the fire department would be there.
Well, the fire department here, the bomboleros were there. They're set up.
couple of
and,
guys standing.
what are they called?
Bomberos.
The bomboleros.
Yeah, they're there. They're there. That's hilarious. Didn't your wife get a little spark in your?
She did, guys.
thing
She
in
got a
your eye?
little. She got a little ash in her eye.
Yeah. So that can happen.
That can happen,
You
right.
might don't want to get too close to it, but it's good fun. And I wonder where the tradition comes from. I'm thinking maybe in the past they would get a real cow to like run around town just like they do in Spain or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They also had these. That people brought burners, like these cooktops hooked to propane, and they had these big giant vats, and they were pouring milk and sugar, and then they had cane sugar alcohol they were dumping in it, and they were stirring it in these big vats, and then they had pitchers, and they were walking around with a stack of cups and pitchers, and everybody gets a cup, and they were loading it, and when they first handed it to me, I didn't know what it was. I'm like, oh, it looks like rice, like Mexican horchata or something, and I took a drink, and I'm like, whoa! It was stiff. Like, this wasn't like a lightly alcoholed drink. This was like a stiff drink, and it was a blast. People having fun, sharing drinks, and the food vendors. There was tons of vendors.
Yeah,
There were street vendors with crafts and arts and crafts. The food was actually really good. I tried a bunch of stuff.
Nice.
Kebabbed everything. Everything you can think of kebabbed.
Yep.
That was tasty, and tons of different vendors. They had empanada. They were making homemade empanadas from scratch right there in the square. It was a blast,
And
man.
then I think the day before that, maybe even that day as well, they had one of those sort of, I don't even know exactly what they call them, but where there's all kinds of vendors selling.
Like a fair.
Yeah, like a fair. Selling, like local artisan goods.
Right.
And they do that all the time here, which is awesome. There's a whole massive sort of cottage industry in and around Vilcabamba of, products that you want that are awesome, and people make a living that way, which is really cool. And they're pretty well supported, both by the community and by the government as well.
Yeah, and over these last 3 or 4 days, there's been, because normally every weekend we'll get some version of that in Vilcabamba, but over these last 3 or 4 days, or this last week of celebration, it's been 3-4-fold of the amount of vendors that are here, and the types of goods, and leather goods, and jewelry, and bracelets,
Food
and
products,
custom, boutique food products, everything handmade, really pottery, spoons and wooden spoons and utensils and woodworking, all kinds of really cool stuff.
Yeah, the main streets on the square are blocked off, so there's a lot of space for that. There's only one street that's still open at the bottom of the square. Everything else is blocked off. and they had live music as well.
Yeah,
Some-
concerts.
Some famous band. I don't know them actually, but
Yeah.
I got some footage. You'll see. It's
No,
good.
they put good money into those things. Like when they do celebrations in Vilcabamba and around Ecuador of one kind or another, even in small towns, like Vilcabamba and Malacatos and these other small towns, they'll have a very professional setup, and they'll spend good money on the band and the setup.
Oh, the setup was
it's
setup was epic.
It's a sound
Huge
system that you
stage,
could hear in the next valley over.
Yeah, yeah.
speakers and lights and
Steam and smoke and
fog.
Fog, I mean.
Yeah.
We should also add that both your daughters did a dance performance for the whole town
they
to see.
did. Yeah.
Including the retreat participants.
Right,
You have to check
right.
that out.
They did. There was all kinds of dancing throughout the festival. There was some of the traditional dancing that we'll show you guys. They have some elders dancing. They had some like comic dancers as well that we can share. And then the youth did this whole program where they had, I think, what did they have, 3 or 4 costume changes even,
Yeah.
and they did like a Footloose theme, and they did some modern pop, and did some Ecuadorian reggaeton, and they did all kinds of cool dances. So that was fun. They did a good job.
Yeah, they did a good job. Yeah, I mean it's pretty amazing. Like they had thousands of people,
Right,
watching
right.
them.
Yeah. That part was cool. Like, and these are all like our kids. These are our daughters and like our kids, our friends' kids.
Right.
And that stuff is awesome. There's such a great community of kids here, who are all friends with each other, all look out for each other, all in these same classes and activities, and then we as parents get to hang out. It actually works really well.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So what else? Anything else on the retreat that is worth mentioning? I know they got to go out to a concert in San Joaquin.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
fun.
That's something that goes on here on maybe every couple
month
months or something.
I think it's pretty
Yeah.
much monthly, every 4 to 6 weeks for sure.
Yeah, there's a gentleman with a beautiful property. He's got a little bar area. They serve food, alcohol, and there's live music. A couple of bands that played there.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, in addition to, of course, all the normal stuff, so all of the educational content that folks get when they're down here, it's really it's really been enjoyable for me, rewarding, I should say, to sort of see how appreciative people are of the value that they're receiving in their 9 days here. So October 13th is our next. If you're into that, we will stick a link below. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to some of this sort of culture mindset stuff, which is really interesting topic to me. And a lot of it goes back to the history. The history of almost everything, right? I think actually, in my opinion, if you look at any country in the world or any group of people, if you look at the history, it makes sense the way people are, how they are. And the U.S. and Ecuador are just very different places culturally, very different places from a mentality standpoint.
Before you go any further, on the vein of history, would you mind sharing the history of that hat? I mean, it's a nice looking hat.
Yeah, you like? It's got little polka dots. It's my wife's hat, but we've had beautiful weather these last couple of days, and I played basketball in the blazing sun this morning. So that was about all the sun I could take today. So, we're getting the job done, and my neck's not going to be as burnt as yours.
So it makes sense. History makes sense. All
All
right.
Exactly.
All right.
So, I'm down a couple of weeks ago. I had to go to Guayaquil, which used to be a very easy trip. You used to be able to fly between Loja and Guayaquil 2 flights a day on Latam, or no, I'm sorry, on the defunct,
Tame.
Thank you, the defunct government airline. And so you used to be able to get in and out of Guayaquil very easily. They have gotten rid of those flights. So now if you want to fly to Guayaquil, you got to go through Quito, which you can do, but it's a little bit of a pain. So most people drive. I drive at this point. It's like a 7, 8, could be 9 if you make some stops. Hour drive to Guayaquil. There's 2 ways to do it. You can go through the mountains in Cuenca. That's usually, I think, how Carl goes. I usually like to go on the coast. It's a little bit flatter, sort of easier drive from my perspective. But either way, it's a good trip out to Guayaquil. So I don't always look forward to those, 7, 8, 9 hour drives with a 7, 8 hour drive, 9 hour drive back the next day. Unfortunately, this time I was not able to take advantage of being close to the beach and hit the beach for a few days. But we had to go deal with a passport, and so we're at the U.S. Embassy in Guayaquil. There's one in Quito as well, and we're at the U.S. Embassy, and we get let in. This is for my daughter's passport. And I'm telling this story because I think it's kind of indicative. It was shocking to me, sort of, some of the cultural differences that came to light through this experience. So we go in and we're there's maybe 200-300 locals in a room who are applying for their visa for the U.S. And then there's this little section that's kind of roped off for the U.S. citizens who are doing their business, probably mostly passports. And so I'm sitting there with, 8 or 10 or 12 Americans. And it was really interesting, right? So the first thing, that the conversation that was going back and forth was people very upset over the quality of service. So they're just
The Americans
the
were?
Americans, right? So the Americans are sitting there basically running their mouth,
Right.
about what time was my appointment was at 12 and it's 12:30 and I can't believe it. It's just like, and they're really upset. It's like cranky,
There's
angry.
probably some Canadians in there too, right?
Well,
No,
this
no,
was
it's
the U.S.
American.
consulate.
Just Americans?
This-
Dang it.
It was a good.
All
But
right.
so
I tried, Bullhorse.
we're sitting there, and I'm looking at Kirsten, my daughter, right? And she's lived here since she was 5, and she's looking at me, and we're having a conversation. I'm telling her, I'm like, yeah, back home this is kind of normal, like to sit in like a government office which is, it has crappy service. You're at a government office, you're at the DMV or something, and people are kind of complaining to each other. You would never have that happen here, like ever. And then one of the ladies gets up. She's like, I'm not taking this anymore. And she gets up and she starts banging on the glass.
Oh, well.
Back there. And she tells them, like, basically, move your ass. Like, like, hey, she's been here since 12. It's 12:30. You guys got to do your job, And like, okay, that's a little over the top, obviously.
Yeah.
But
Just a little.
this difference is striking. Like, Ecuadorians are so mellow. They're so sort of conservative and humble and quiet and all that kind of stuff. I hadn't seen that side of U.S. culture in years, right? But like when I lived in New York, you saw stuff like this all the time. Like people are shouting at each other, getting upset about one thing or the other. It was just interesting to me to see the difference and to see how shocking it was to Kirsten. And even how shocking it was to me just because it's been so long since I had seen, you mentioned you've never seen a fist fight. Yeah, you don't see people upset at one another here.
No, it's very rare.
Yeah, it's not confrontational society
No.
at all. Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point, I think the reason for this, the culture, but also they're used to things starting later than they should. So for them, it's like, oh, okay, it's an hour later, but that's normal here, right? So. Whereas Americans, I think things tend to be on time, right? You have an appointment at that time, it's going to start at that time. So it teaches you patience for sure.
Well, and I was surprised how much my attitude had changed around it. Because my approach is like, if I get out of here today with the passport, that's a win. Versus, they sold me 1 o'clock and it's 1:30. Like, I'm just like going with the flow.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be very pleased if it works.
Yeah.
Which is the attitude you have to have here to survive. But I've noticed, I really have incorporated that. Like, it didn't even occur to me to be upset or even think, even have the thought of like what time it is versus when I was supposed to be talking to them.
Yeah.
And you would, if you don't adapt to that, then you just have all this unnecessary stress in your life, right?
Sure.
I mean, it takes time, but if you don't, then you're just stressed out all the time, and that's kind of the opposite of why people move here. It's the opposite of why I moved here, and because it is a less stressful way of living in general. But if you don't do that, if you don't make that adaptation, then you're creating stress unduly. It's not good.
And I think that's true for a lot of people that come here, right? It's like a lot of people are looking to kind of exit the matrix, right? Type of thing.
Yeah.
They're not looking to like, jump into stress and anger and and working 10,000 hours
Right.
and all that kind of stuff.
It seems like anytime I go on Twitter or Facebook or any social media or watch anything or hear about anything, it seems like the world is getting crazier by the day. Like, I don't even know. Like, all of a sudden, my friends are talking back in the States are talking about, the U.S. is publicly talking about alien life forms and spacecrafts, and it seems like nobody cares. Like,
Right. It's true.
Like, what happened? Like, how
Yeah,
are
that's
we,
interesting,
right?
isn't it? They had like a hearing or something.
Yeah,
where
a congressional hearing
where
where they're
they- yeah.
testifying that
that it's
they've
non-human
had
life.
non-human pilots and
Yeah.
spacecrafts,
Really?
and they've had
Yeah,
all
and no
this-
one's right.
and kind of
I
nobody
saw the
cares.
headlines, but I didn't watch the video or
Yeah.
anything. I thought it was like kind of a fringe thing. But that's like
No,
yeah.
no, I think it was I don't know. I don't really know, but I think it was like a
It
congressional
was a
hearing, or
hearing
something
in
like
Congress,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
who knows? It's just strange that somehow, we've heard about aliens and this hiding all the information in Area 51 and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden now you got a government kind of coming out and saying, well, they have these, maybe not that aliens, but non-human life forms or unidentified flying out, whatever
Right,
they're
right.
using. They're changing that word now too. They call it something else, but they're these things that they can't describe. And now they're just publicly saying, yeah, that's real. And nobody cares now all of a sudden. Like, I don't get it.
That's really interesting. Isn't it?
Yeah.
No, and you were telling me like when you went last time you went back, like you felt like people were super on edge.
Yeah,
Like in
yeah.
general?
Yeah, it feels like when I was back during the holiday time, and maybe that was holiday time,
Sure.
people were a little more on edge than normal, having family gatherings and that kind of stuff and preparing for the holidays. But it did seem like the general level of tension seemed much higher than the last time I was there, where it felt like people were just wound tighter in general, where, I saw people, I mean, I did it myself even, where driving and I had somebody kind of cut me off where I had to slam on the brakes, and I like almost flipped out. Like, it happens in Ecuador all the time, like passing on curves but it doesn't bother me here. But for some reason, when I was there, I was just like, I'm gonna, try and get in front of them and then brake check them, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, so there was like something there, like I don't know what it is, but I noticed it in lots of interactions where I just saw people that are just kind of, you could see it, you can sense it. It was like you could feel it in rooms and situations and it jumped out to me because it was something different than here. Like I don't feel that way here. I don't sense that here. I don't see that here. I don't feel that way myself here. Mm-hmm. So then when I went back to then see that and feel that and observe it, it was different. So it jumped out. I don't know how to describe it other than that.
Interesting.
Yeah. You got
No,
something?
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you do acclimate and acculturate
Right.
for where you live, and it changes you. I mean, I've changed such a great deal on that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like Ecuador is a place that's very accepting, very accept what is, go with the flow. Everything's okay no matter what. People don't spend a lot of time here angry because the reality is different than what their wishes or expectations were. Like, people just don't really do that here. Like, if something gets canceled, it gets canceled. If you wanted to, have this happen and it didn't happen, it's okay. Like, no one's getting really bent out of shape here about stuff like that. And I've become that way to some degree. Like, not fully, but way more than I was. Like, I've chilled out, a lot, and I think that's because you just kind of fall into the sort of, I don't know, almost like the group consciousness or whatever of where you live.
Right.
And it rubs off on you
Yeah.
for in a real way. And then the nature, I think, plays a role too. It's like, I mean, it is the culture here, but at least for me in Vilcabamba, it's like, I went to play basketball this morning. I took my son with me. He has a great time playing with one of the sons of a friend who plays. And then, I had to meet you guys, whatever time we had to meet. I had like 45 minutes. we ran to the river and, you know, floated down the river and did all that. And then you just feel amazing after that. And it's just kind of different life, you know, different life.
The nature here is really grounding. There's tons of oxygen, right? So you can see there's wildlife everywhere. There's plants and trees and produce, and it's really oxygen-rich environment. And it's grounding. Like you feel good walking around here. It feels different than when you're in an environment like a city, where it's just there's green spaces, of course, and those feel great. But in general, when you have so much concrete and building and less green, there's a different feeling on, that grounding effect, and it's palpable here for sure.
Yeah, and that's, I'm sure, I think that's probably largely true back home too, Earl versus, urban, rural versus urban.
Earl.
Did I say Earl? I combined rural and urban.
My name is Earl. You sound like, you kind of look like an Earl. You could be an Earl with that hat. Hey, Earl.
I have an
How's your other brother, Earl?
I have an off-color joke, but it's not appropriate for YouTube. Yeah, I mean, because again, I was in Guayaquil recently. Like, you don't have that vibe there.
Definitely
not at all, right? It's much a city. People are stressed. People are short with each other. They don't have the you're not doing all the buenos diases and the smiles and all the all that kind of stuff.
Before we move on, guys, if you want, if you like this kind of content, pause the video for a second, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. We'd love your support there. Hit the notification bell if you'd like to be notified of new content we put out. That is, we have some new content that we're going to share with you guys at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that, and we'll tease some new stuff we've got in the pipelines. So definitely be on the lookout for that. But if you're interested, there's some really unique Vilcabamba alien stories. UFO stories. There's kinds of mythical, stories about Mount Mandango and other areas of Vilcabamba and Ecuador that are related to other non-human species and unidentified flying objects. So if you guys want to see an episode like that, put some comments below. Type UFO or alien in the comments below if you guys want to see an episode about that. And somebody on the team may or may not have a personal encounter they can share with you. I won't call them out now, but they may or may not share that on the video if you guys comment below UFO.
All right. Fascinating stuff.
It is kind of fascinating, actually.
There's a lot of mythical stuff going on here, like legends and myths and stories of the Inca and the emperor and where they hid the gold. There's all these areas where they think the gold is hidden.
Every property basically that I've ever been to, they're like, the gold's buried on this one.
Right. There's stories of tunnels going under the mountains between countries even. Right. Stories of giants. Ecuador, giants.
There's skeletons.
Well, more than stories. I was going to say, they found one in Changaimina.
Yeah, allegedly,
No, not allegedly. It's in a museum,
Is it in a museum?
Yeah.
Right. I think these are not accepted by modern science and the theory of evolution.
No, they have them. Well, of course, but they have them.
They're shooting holes in it. They're trying to discredit that giants existed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. But here everyone. That's accepted.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting, all of that, and then different. There's a lot of stories of gnomes here. Gnomes.
Is that right?
Yeah, local people. You see them painted sometimes. They're like little gnomes with like a white hat.
I've seen
in
those
Loja,
on
on the municipal building. I'm pretty sure there's a painting
Yeah.
of a gnome there. Yeah, with a big white beard, and some people have seen those supposedly. So, anyways, we should make an episode about it. Bring on some guests.
We have to bring on some people.
Experiences.
There's some really interesting folks that have some cool stories for that.
Even Manuel Vivanco has some interesting stories.
Oh, yeah?
Who's he's the ex-president of the Banco Central, the central bank, of Ecuador. And he's got Vilcabamba UFO first-hand accounts, which is interesting. He'd be a great interview. He did agree to do it. I need to do it.
Nice.
Next time he's here, because he comes from one of those families that was one of the original families in Vilcabamba, and can share a lot of the history of this valley, which is really a fascinating history.
Sure.
The amount of change, in the last 20 to 25 years is absolutely monumental. Like, highways now connect this whole country. 20 years ago, 25 years ago at the most, the road ended in Vilcabamba. Like, that was it. Like, all these towns that you might see on our website, Kinara and Yangana and Zumba and Valladolid and Palanda, and like those were inaccessible. You couldn't.
They were trails.
They were trails. Yeah, you're on a horse or foot after Vilcabamba recently.
Yeah, not too long.
Like in the 90s, really?
Yeah, I think
maybe the 80s.
Yeah, we'd have to check the year. We're gonna interview Peter, who's the owner of Izcailuma, where we host the retreats, a beautiful German-run hotel. But when he got here, whenever that was, I think it was about 20, 25 years ago. But if it's 30, it could be 30, whatever it was. The road didn't even get to Izcailuma. So he built the cabañas where they're built because there was no road there.
Wow.
And now there's a road, and he's like, oh, there's a little bit of, now there's a car that drives by here and there, but
right. Yeah, Manuel was telling me this property is called La Molienda. It was the place where they ground the sugar cane to make it into sugar, right? And he was saying down here, everything you looked at down below was sugar cane fields.
Oh, no kidding.
Basically.
Wow.
That was one of the biggest sugar cane Molienda right here, which is now, I would say, a historical luxury home.
It's fascinating. It's like a museum, yeah.
It's like a museum, yeah.
Yeah, and Malacatos had sugarcane until later. Like, that developed a little bit later, which is a little surprising. But that developed a little. There's still some sugarcane in Malacatos. But yeah, these towns have gotten popular as sort of suburbs is the wrong word, but it's like the country getaway for folks from Loja, from Lojanos, who are 45 minutes away from where we are. And so now they're mostly for residential use. It's also, I've noticed too, I mean, this place has changed a lot in the 10 years I've been here. It's changed a lot in the last few. The weekends now are hopping. Like they're, the weekends were always more populated, significantly so, than during the weekday. But it's gotten to the point now on the weekends, like, there's a little traffic.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to park in certain areas.
Yeah,
the rivers are kind of crowded.
Right. Yeah.
It's different,
Yeah, after COVID, when things started opening up,
Yeah.
Vilcabamba kind of became the hub. Like, you go to Vilcabamba on the weekend, more so than before. And also, owning a property in Vilcabamba or Malacatos for a Lojano, it seems like a status thing almost, right?
Yeah.
They all have, if you're up in the middle, upper class, you have to have a home or someplace in Vilcabamba, Malacatos.
Yep.
And then people that can't afford that, they'll come here on the weekends and rent a hotel or hostel or Airbnb and stuff. So the town gets pretty crowded on the weekends. But
And I think part of like when Carl was talking about the festival that happened this past week, and we've had all these people, a lot of those were Lojanos, right? There was thousands of people because there were so many Lojanos that came down to visit and participate.
There was no parking space.
Right.
There's no park like way out.
Right.
Yeah, and that's it's funny as I become like a curmudgeon, like grumpy old man.
As you become.
That's right. I've only been that since I was like 14. It's okay, but I like escape on the weekends. I like go out to like Guatuche, which is out towards Tumianuma, where there's still it's like 15, 20 minutes away, but it's where nobody lives out there. It's still quiet. There's nothing going on. And even though I live in this quiet rural town, I've acclimated to the point where I want even quieter sometimes.
Yeah, it's amazing too. I felt this weekend. I've been here for 12 years now, so I've been here for a while. But Vilcabamba, it feels like our home, right? Like, this is our town. This is our home. Like, so when you see the Lojanos showing up, they're not from here. Like,
not at all, right.
You're like, oh, they're coming from
out of
town.
towners.
Whereas, right, obviously we're from out of town as well. When they see us, they think, oh, they're gringos, tourists, travelers. But this feels like our hometown, our home.
Yeah, and I mean, once you've been here a while, it's kind of cool. Like, it's like you see kids who are now adults that you've known since they were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. You see adults go through their sort of life events and life cycles, and everybody.
Yeah.
You know, so like, you know, it is a real community here, and it is not divided at all along, you know, cultural or where you're from, you know, lines. Like the if you've lived here a while, like everybody knows you. You know everybody. They know who you are. You know who they are. You have an idea who their family is, at least, if you don't know them better than that. And you know, and it's the support and the community aspect of it is just awesome. Like,
What time did we leave Elatio last night? We walked. What time of night was that? Remember?
had to be 7:30, 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. So it was dark out. We're walking back from this gated community called Elatio. It's a few blocks from town. And I was with my family, and we're walking, and in 3 blocks before we got into town, there was like 4 or 5 people that either drove by on a motorcycle or we passed on the way, and they're all like, "Hola, Brandon! Hey, Brandon!" Huh? And we get to town, and Tiffany's like, "Geez, we walked 3 blocks, and 7 people said hi to you, and it's 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, whatever it was." And
Yep.
it's just like that, man. It's just you all of a sudden and I've only been here 2 years, and it's like that already, you know. So I can't imagine being here 10 and 12 years.
Yeah.
You guys literally know everybody.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, we go around with the retreat groups, and you know they can see that everyone's saying hi to me.
Everyone,
People are
yeah.
just,
Right.
You know, because you get to know everybody. Everyone knows you. Even going to Loja, you meet people that you know.
Totally. I mean, I was gonna say, like, I lived in Loja for a while. It was the same thing in a 250,000 person city.
Right.
People are saying hi to you all the time. Yeah, and it's interesting too. It's like, you know, that makes reputation that much more important because you can't hide.
Right.
So, you know, you really, in this culture in general, but definitely in the small towns, you know, how you show up morally, ethically, just kind of who you are, it really matters. And that, you know, I think that's been a lot of fun for me too, to sort of have a hand in shaping the community a little bit, you know, and just seeing all the people who respond to some of the content that we put out and then come here
End up moving here,
and add value to the community. You know, the community comes stronger and better, and that's been really gratifying as well.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, we got elections coming up. we had the death cross. I think we explained all that on a previous episode. If you guys can go back and check out, maybe someone remembers the title, but we've got sort of emergency elections. I'm not even sure when they are. In a few months. They're very soon.
It's in August.
A couple
this
of
month.
months. This month. There you go. It's and we've got, you know, typical Latin American politics. We've got 837 candidates duking it out. I'm not going to get into politics here too much, but it is a very funny place politically. And then we'll see what happens. We'll see, you know, that whoever becomes president and the assembly as well will only be in power for what, like a year and a half,
2 years or a year and a half?
Yeah, something like that, until there's national elections again. So this is sort of a quick taste of power for these guys, and then the real elections come, you know, a year or so later. But
And there's no like primary elections like in the States, are there? Because it seems like for this presidential election, there's multiple people from the same party all running for president, right? So in the States, they do primaries and they narrow the candidates down. And here,
I
it
don't
doesn't
think
seem...
there's more than one president. No, each party has its candidate for each office.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, so
but they choose internally, to my knowledge. I'm
okay.
not an expert on Ecuadorian politics, but to my knowledge, each party chooses their candidate internally, and then they run. And you have to get, in the first round, you have to get over 40% of the vote in order for there not to be a second round.
Okay.
So usually there's a second round because there's so many candidates, but it's possible. It's possible there won't be.
I heard yesterday there was 8 candidates.
Yeah,
Maybe they're less because it's a.
Yeah, usually there's more, but yeah, a lot of people aren't running. They're just waiting for next time. Some of my favorites are not running in this particular one. But yeah, you know, as the world turns, so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And then we've had, you know, people are always interested in, because there's been a lot of international headlines. We've talked about it a couple of times, sort of the security situation in the country and security overall here. You know, it's definitely turbulent times, I think, in the world. You know, I think the world is changing, and there's lots going on in the world. And for Ecuador as well, right? There's been, you know, there's been interesting stuff here that's happened over the last I don't know, I'd say year or two, that have sort of changed a little bit the way things are here. But at least here locally, things have been very, very calm now for, I don't know, an extended period of time. I don't know how long, 4 or 5 months.
A couple months at
something
least,
like
yeah.
that, which has been great to sort of return to normal after there was a little rash of robberies that took place. So that's been awesome. It kind of feels back to that very safe, happy valley, so to speak, that this place has always been. So that's been cool. And, I think overall in the country, security is on a lot of people's minds. Ecuadorians are not used to the headlines that are coming out of Esmeraldas or coming out of Guayaquil or coming out of some of the coastal areas, coastal cities, and people would like to see that stop. And so I think we'll see, with the elections and what happens here over the next couple of years, kind of how that goes. But yeah, it's been it feels very safe here to me.
Yeah,
so,
agreed. Talk a little bit about, just back to the elections for a second, because, in Ecuador it's like a holiday, right? You get off of work, you get off of work to go vote. It's mandatory.
Yep.
It's
like a $50 fine if you don't vote.
If you're a citizen, or so as a visa,
we don't have to vote.
You don't have to vote, but you can.
We're allowed
we
to.
can.
You can
We're
vote.
supposed to be residents for 5 years before we vote, but they put us on the rolls automatically.
Oh, no
so
kidding.
you can vote.
Oh,
ahead.
interesting.
Yeah.
So local Ecuadorians get the day off from work.
Yep.
And then don't they stop serving
Yeah,
alcohol
it's
as well?
it's either 2 or 3 day dry law.
Right.
And
That's interesting.
I think they vote normally on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But I think it's either Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There's no alcohol, or at least Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah. I thought that's interesting. So if you guys have never been to Ecuador or South American countries that do things like that, that's in the States it's not that at all. People don't vote because they're going to work. Here,
Right. Yeah.
You have the day off. You're going to go vote. So it's interesting that way.
Yeah, and I don't know what it's like in the States. I've never voted in Canada either. I left before I voted for the first time, but the whole town walks to the voting area. There's only one place. It's at the colegio, the high school. So you have the whole town kind of on the street walking back and forth from the voting.
Really?
Which you see a lot of people. Like it's like a community event or something, a social event, right?
Yeah, and politics here are much less divisive, which is interesting too, because they swing much. The swings are much larger, left to right, so to speak. But people don't hate each other over politics.
That's
they
true.
Don't,
That's very
they
true.
don't. It's like there's the political season, which is like a month or two, where there's a campaign and then an election, and then that's it. No one really does much talking about it outside of when there's big events and things like that. But it's not, people aren't up in arms over red or blue, or
Right.
disliking each other because they're left or right or whatever. You just really don't have that here.
And talk a little bit about what happens when a chunk of the local people really are upset with politicians, and because it's kind of, I don't know if it's unique, but it's interesting. I mean, I guess it's probably unique that they actually have some power over government in a way.
Yeah, like for me, it's been one of the most interesting and comforting for me sort of aspects of political life here, is that when government does things that are crazy enough or that upset enough people, particularly the indigenous, it's really it tends to be led by the indigenous. They don't take it. They come out of their towns and their mountains and wherever they're at, and they close the roads and they march and they protest, and they've toppled government here quite a few times. Not recently, not since 2005 or 6, but.
And there's a name they refer to that.
They call it El Paro, or
Paro.
yeah. But yeah, like,
Is there a translation
like
for
stop? It just means
okay.
I guess it's because they're closing the roads, I would imagine. But
Yeah.
and yeah, we've seen, I don't know, since 2013, there's been maybe 3 or 4 or so like national strikes, pyros. Maybe only 2 of them really were serious. One in particular, 3 or 4 years back, and then there was one before that when Correa was still president. Those were like the 2 serious ones. Correa had to back down on what he was trying to pass at that time, or he would have been in trouble.
Right.
And I think Moreno was like not giving in over the weekend away from having been toppled as well. And it's basically because if the people are that against it and it's real and it continues and it goes on, it puts the government in a position where they would have to order the police and the military to basically shoot people, and the police and the military won't do that.
Right.
And so it puts then the police and the military in the position to say, well, sorry, Mr. President, but like the people have spoken type of thing. It's interesting. I mean, Latin American politics, it's different. Right. It's different. Yep. Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else? Carl's got a great smile. Comment how much you guys like his smile. Take that in the comments.
Smile.
Backwards hat. You don't see the backwards hat on Carl very often. All right. I tried. All right. Well, anyways, guys, thank you all for tuning in. Again, October 13th. We'd love to see you down here for the next Vilcabamba Lifestyle Retreat. Come see if this place is right for you or not. For all of us, it really is a magnificent place to live. Not for everybody, but come see if it's right for you. We'd love to see you here then. Thank you all for tuning in. Anything else we want to cover?
We hope to see you here one day.
So until then,
see you next time.
Ciao, guys.